Well, I think my minute is up, so why don't we go ahead and get started. Be respectful of your time. It's, I think, going to be a fairly packed agenda today. So one, just thank you, commissioners, for your presence this afternoon.
Just one moment, Dante, sorry. I only have 9 in attendance. I don't know if you want to wait for a quorum. There's Dottie, she's joining.
Okay, no, I think we can go ahead because there's nothing that we'll need a quorum for, at least the response at the very moment. We should get there. The quorum isn't the quorum 9? How many is the quorum?
Sorry, a quorum is 11, and you have had Dottie and Davina have joined, so you now have a quorum. Thank you.
Okay, great. Josh just said he needs the link for some reason, so if one of the staff, maybe Coletta, if you could just make sure Josh has that link, that would be great.
Yes, I'll reach out to him now.
Thank you very much. So again, good afternoon, commissioners and Madam Mayor. Appreciate your presence, Chief. Good to see you. Appreciate everyone's time and attention today. It'll probably be a very long and packed meeting. I imagine there's a whole lot of emotions of some sort or another going on given what's happening in Washington, D.C. at this very moment. So I just want to take a moment to make space for that as we've watched what we watched, and however you want to identify or define it. It is, I think, a moment in history that we haven't seen in, I don't know, maybe a couple of 100 years. And so certainly with respect to communities of color and their viewing of this, I think there's a whole lot of angst as they see how the response maybe looks differently from BLM movement this summer versus to what's happening today. And I think we're maybe seeing a distinction in how that response is carried out, which on some level is why we're here as a commission doing this work, so that we can ensure that the outcomes for everyone are equitable and the same. And so we are trying to do that work in the best way that we can. And so I'll just pause and just offer the space for any thoughts at the moment, knowing the variety of emotions folks might be having at this time. So I'll just pause.
Dante, this is Darlene. I appreciate you. I appreciate you recognizing and taking a moment to recognize the moment that we are in right now, the historical moment that we are in right now, the all too familiar moment that we are in right now. I am emotional and upset right now. I have been following what's going on in Washington very closely, and following even what's happening here in Utah very closely. And I'm very happy that what's happening in Utah did not rise to what's happening in our nation capital. But we would be remiss to not at least acknowledge the disproportionate response, or should I say the lack of response of law enforcement in DC, and also recognizing that if these were terrorists of color, there would be many lives lost right now. My heart is just aching. And I just want to say thank you for at least acknowledging the moment that we are in. It is important that we don't forget this moment.
Thank you for sharing, Commissioner.
If I could, I would like to say something.
Please.
Being one of the demonstrators from the George Floyd protests, I can attest to the, let's say, different response. Can also attest to how armed white men can storm our nation's Capitol building, attack our nation's officers, and continue to decry our constitutional progression. As a young person, we are asked to believe in a system of democracy, of values through voting, through patience, and through policy. And today we saw that get tarnished and thrown in the trash can. And so my confusion as a young African-American man is, when do I start to lose faith in my democracy? When do I start to question the values of my leaders and the people that are supposed to represent me and my community? To what degree do I go to trust other people to help me build my community, to tell me which way is the right way to go? Especially when a variety of people do not reflect my racial background, nor the experiences that I have to live and face on a daily basis. Not when my career ends, not when I take off my uniform, and not when I go home at night. This is my reality. This is a lot of other people's realities. These are the realities of not only racial oppression, but also financial oppression. We have people sleeping on the streets here in Salt Lake City. We have their belongings being thrown away during the holidays. We have the police department being used as a mobilized force to literally take means away from people during a crisis, during a pandemic, in the names of health. Chief Brown, I know you can hear me talking to you right now, and I love you very much, but what do we do? Mayor Mendenhall, when you offered to be my mentor after the May 30th protest, I haven't heard from you since. What do I do? These are real questions. This is not a political playground. This is our reality. And I really hope that you guys can hear the sincerity in my voice when I tell you the games are over. We need to find a resolution, and we need to find it soon, and we need to start with the game plan, and we need to map it out. It is no longer week by week basis, vacation times. We can't afford to do that anymore. We need to see a momentum shift. And I believe a lot of my youth peers who are going to be living their experiences far past your lives can attest to this. You have had your time, it is our time, and we have now tried to express through demonstrations, a majority peaceful. We've offered to come to the table, but when we get to the table and then we see at our nation's highest level what we saw today, am I wrong for feeling the way I was on May 30th? That's my only question.
Thank you, Commissioner, for sharing. Much appreciated. And those questions are, I think, on the minds of a whole lot of folks. And I don't presume to speak for anybody else. I would just suggest that those questions are on the minds of a whole lot of folks. And when we're told to trust our system, it gets harder and harder sometimes when we see things like what we saw today. And that's not specific to Salt Lake or Denver or anywhere else, but one reflects on the other, fairly or unfairly. It all reflects on the system that we're talking about. So thank you. Any other thoughts before we get into the agenda?
Siobhan, we can't hear you.
Yes.
I think she's trying to talk. There.
Oh, Siobhan?
Yeah.
Yes, apparently my headphones are just failing me today. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just going to recognize the mayor to see if she wanted to offer a brief response, and then we can probably continue that conversation offline, but I wanted to see if she had wanted to take a moment.
Sure. Thanks, Siobhan. Thanks, MJ, for your honest words as always. And Darlene as well. I know that there was would you mind everybody, if I kind of roll it into the beginning of the agenda? Because I think they kind of come together.
Yes.
I'll start by answering your last question, MJ. I don't believe that any of us or anyone should ever be able to tell you that you're wrong for feeling anything that you felt on May 30th or any day since then. Disappointment, incredulity, anger and frustration. And you and I have talked about a spectrum of reactions that happened on May 30th. And I'm never going to tell you, even knowing all of what you shared with me, that you were wrong to feel that way. And I am here as a community member, and I'm here as your mayor for the city. And I'm part of a system of democracy in America that has gone on for centuries, making systems that are intentionally inequitable, and they're not broken. They do exactly what they were designed to do, which is oppress certain people. And it is the discomfort of being a part of a system in a role, whether it's as a public servant in our police department, fire department, 911, parks department, utilities, what have you. We're a part of that system. And today, I think we're still reeling and we're still watching this terrorism unfold, and with very little reaction from the security forces at the Capitol, who, as a visitor on occasion, I've had the experience of running into by taking a wrong stairway, and I feel like I've had firsthand experience that is much stronger than anything I've seen today so far. And we're all still reeling. So what I'll say is thank you to all of you for showing up again and again, and even today. Thank you for preserving what is right and decent in this country, which is a conversation that seeks to be respectful and evolutionary in nature and inclusionary. And you are literally being the country and the people that we need to be just by being here today. I am confronted with the fragility of our democracy that I know we're all seeing shaken, but I am very confident that we will come through this, certainly as a nation. And I'm relieved to hear that the Congress is working to come back together even tonight to finish their work. But I know that cities persevere, cities remain, cities keep the work of democracy going. We keep showing up. And we get to the work of talking with our communities and changing, I hope, changing the way that we serve so that that equity, that respect, and that dignity can prevail. So I want to thank you for being on the commission and let you know that our vision for our Salt Lake City Police Department, as you know, is that Salt Lake City Police Department is the best in the nation because they are willing to do the unpacking work, the listening, and then the changing that has to happen here. Thank you, Chief Brown, for staying at the table. We want our police to evolve in a direction that increases the safety of both our police officers on the street and every single member of the public that they serve, housed and unhoused. Visitors, businesses, people passing through that we'll never see again. It does not matter who. We need every member of the public to feel confident that they'll be treated equitably and that they will be treated respectfully by our police officers. This is where we must go. I know that we are not yet there. And I don't need to remind you of the work of some reforms that we brought in August and were trained and put into the books 30 days later. And there have been experience and incidents in that short window of time that reiterate how important the work of evolutionary change is in our police department and departments across this country. We've got three main priorities that I wanted to wrap up by sharing with you. And of course, I'm open to your feedback and questions. But following me, I know that my Chief of Staff, Rachel Otto, is going to talk about the legislative process. And she's had many years on the Hill here in the state of Utah, working as a government advocate for cities and as a lobbyist representing cities from across the state. But our priorities right now in a general sense are around supporting our police department as they make that work and they create that space for the structural changes with our human resources department and within the organization itself so that we can help them to improve their communication. That's internal and external communication and the morale of the department. Because whether I'm making changes internally, my family's making changes, my community's making changes, our city's making changes, we need to have some confidence that we know what we're in this for. We know that we're supported in doing the work of change, and we need our police department to know that we support them and we want them to have the tools they need to make these significant changes that we have and that are coming from you. We secondly, and not in order of priority by any means, prioritize the work of supporting you as our commission so that your work, the work you do, can ensure your ability to make thorough recommendations to us. We want meat, and I know that that's what's coming. And that you can give that to the city council, myself, and the public at the conclusion of this first year of work. And I say first year, not because I'm trying to sneak in a contract to loop you all into a lifetime of serving on the commission, but because clearly this work has to continue. It has to be an ongoing, built-in, funded part with the community helping guide that rudder of how we continue to reevaluate and build anew. Okay, so the commission, our police department, and the third is our priority of working with the new governor's administration and the state legislature as they look at or don't look at law enforcement related bills in this session that are going to make sense for us and for public safety and for our officers' safety. So those are our main arenas of focus right now as we move forward in our priorities. And I'm grateful that you, in the work you've been doing and that you are continuing with, will help us to put the actual structure into, help us build the policies, help us make the budget changes, help us bring lobbying and legislative efforts to our state, and hopefully beyond. Hopefully beyond. Thanks for giving me a moment. I know that you have a packed schedule. I'm happy to take any comments or questions, or Also, because of your limited schedule, we could set up a follow-up time, and I'd be happy to make time for that.
Dante, you're muted.
In 2021. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I think we all certainly respect the passion of your words. It's certainly reflected in how you present what it is that you are hoping for your city. If I can take kind of an executive privilege as facilitator and suggest that we hold off on questions for you at this moment, because I'm sure people could spend the whole hour and a half asking you questions. But if we could kind of work through the agenda and see where we are, then there might be an opportunity for that. If you're available for I'm not sure if you're here for the whole meeting, but that would be ideal.
I'm not here for the whole meeting tonight. There's some other things coming up this evening.
Understood.
But Coletta can help us to schedule another time or smaller group meetings, whatever you'd like.
Great. Thank you.
Thank
Much
you.
appreciated.
Thank you, Coletta.
Before we jump to Ms. Otto for her update, I'd like to just kind of go back and finish up some real quick infrastructure things, such as review of the previous minutes. Hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to review the minutes from September 23rd and November 18th. And I would just ask to see if there's any corrections, additions to those minutes, or if they are accepted as they were written. Silence is approval is my question. So I see thumbs up for approval of those two meeting minutes. I think we're good. Thank you. So those minutes are accepted. In terms of the public meeting guidelines, usually the good Reverend provides those for us. Ms. Trishman, I don't have those in front of me. If you're available to offer any thoughts on those guidelines, that would be wonderful. Or Ms. Moody Lynch.
Thank you. Of course, I can share with you the guidelines. We just ask that you, any commenters or commissioners as they arrive, just be sure that you here we try to establish a safe and respectful environment, which means the meeting will be conducted in an orderly manner, free from intimidation and threats to safety. Please be mindful and keep comments free of discriminatory language, referring to a person or group based on their religion, ethnicity, nationality, race, color, descent, gender, sexual orientation, disability, age, or other gender identity factor. Items or comments that disrupt the meeting, intimidate other participants, or that may cause safety concerns are not allowed. So that is the extent of the public meeting guidelines that I'll read and let you proceed.
Thank you, ma'am. Also, I think for 2021, I was told that we need to reconfirm that we are meeting virtually as opposed to in person. So
yes, would you like me to read that as well?
That would be great. Thank you.
Yes, of course. So the core commissioners sorry, I was echoing for a minute. The core commissioners have created a written determination that their meetings will be electronic due to the current circumstances of an emergency, that a physical location will present a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be in attendance at any anchor location. Therefore, the commission meeting will not have a physical location and all attendees will connect remotely.
So thank you. So do we need to take a thumbs up question on that?
Nope, that's been determined already. So now you just move ahead.
Great, thank you. And if I could, while we have the privilege of the mayor here, if I could skip to agenda item number 6, which is the reports that we have prepared on behalf of the subcommittees, it might give her an opportunity to really see the work that's going on. So is there any objection to skipping down to that? Okay, so the goal with this is to have some subcommittee reports with what has been going on and any possible broad language for recommendations that may be coming to the full commission for their review and approval to move forward to both the mayor and city council. So if we can just go into that. So we'll have updates from school safety, from training, and from policy and practice. And then also we always have a report back from the youth subcommittee. So if we can just kind of do this in order, I would suggest that I can go first with training, since that's the first part of being a police officer, is to go through training. So I can share the updates of what we've been doing briefly before I actually share the recommendations and things. But we've really been reviewing everything from the academy to discussions around in-service, gathering a lot of data, as are all of the committees and all of you, gathering a lot of data. We've heard from the training division captain, also listening and talking to those who are in charge of the critical incident team, CIT, as well as the social worker in charge of the social worker workers on the CIT team, and looking at how those function, what the curricula is within the academy and some of the in-service trainings, and the demographics of all of that, how it impacts communities of color specifically, how communities of color, officers of color are part of those programs, and asking those types of questions. So I'm going to share my screen briefly, and the work that's been being done by the subcommittee. So as it relates to 3 specific areas, we've come up with, we've focused and highlighted some very specific areas within 3 component areas. One is as the field training officers, who are those officers who take the recruits once the academy is essentially, they're done with their content, and then are working the road and getting the experience and the wisdom, hopefully, and the technical expertise of actually doing the work, riding in the car with their field training officers. And so what we've learned and considered as concerns or issues specifically with the FTO program is that out of the 67 current field training officers who are in that rotation, 2 of them are Hawaiian or Pacific Islander officers, and 4 are Latino. And that is the only diversity, at least of race or ethnicity, within the FTO program. There's no currently targeted outreach efforts to ensure or improve that diversity. It's designed so that officers can self-select to say, I want to be a part of the program and I'm going to apply. So our recommendation for that would be in broad terms. Again, none of these recommendations are ready for any vote to move forward as we kind of hone that language specifically. But the broad recommendation would be to create a process for targeted outreach to officers of color, as well as provide incentives for folks to participate in the program. The second component is, as I mentioned, related to the crisis intervention team. Some issues that we've noticed are the training is not prioritized. Typically, the mantra is that all of our officers are CIT trained, which in fact is not necessarily true as it relates to lateral hires. There's no data specifically captured to know whether they are in fact currently certified or whether they've ever been certified as within CIT. Recertification is voluntary. You are continued to be certified up to 2 years after you've left the academy. Then after that time period, your certification expires, and then you can volunteer to become recertified. So currently in the program, there are 189 officers that have chosen to recertify who are on the street. 272 have chosen not to recertify. So there's a concern about the lack of current certification for these officers. And also, there's an insufficient budget to enlarge the program. Currently, the program is capped at 4 police officers to rotate the work, as well as working with 8 social workers for one particular shift, and their officers are only on during the day shift. So given those, yes, ma'am. Mayor?
Thanks, Dante. And I'd be happy to have a response as a follow-up if you want to, but I wondered about the content of the CIT program and whether or not that is sufficient, is acceptable, or if you might be also looking at a recommendation about the training itself or additional training.
No, thank you. And at this point, we haven't specifically looked at the content. It's our understanding, and again, we haven't seen the curriculum, but that the content is almost the same as the state-sponsored curriculum, which Salt Lake City used to essentially run for the state. but subsequent to the separation of those, the content is essentially the same, but for some of the scenario-based training. And so we haven't specifically looked at the content itself as opposed to just who is currently certified. So the recommendations from this particular content area are one, that CIT requires CIT's recertification for all officers, requires CIT certification for all lateral hires, increase the budget to complete this priority because we know it costs for every officer that goes through the program. And then increase the budget to CIT to provide for more officers to cover more than one shift and have sufficient staffing to cover when the officers are unavailable to work their shifts. As I understand, as we heard from Sergeant in charge of the program, currently, I think 3 out of those 4 officers are on either some type of leave. So there's only 1 officer left to be on call during the shift. The third component area is related to training itself within the academy and the in-service, related to specifically equity, implicit bias, and community policing curriculum. There are no Salt Lake City community-based facilitators of color in the academy, nor in any of the in-services that we're aware of. There's no component of the academy that provides the history of Salt Lake City and its communities of color. And then finally, the most recent budget document that we saw states that funding for Salt Lake City PD's DEI trainer, Arbinger, has been quote unquote removed for fiscal year 21. So not quite sure what that means because we haven't had an opportunity to engage since we received that document. But even if that is not specifically the case in terms of funding for Arbinger, within these recommendations, one, require that Salt Lake City community-based trainers of color be a part of the academy and the in-service training team. Require that the curriculum that is the best practice and is co-created with these community-based trainers. Require that recruits learn the history of the diverse communities in Salt Lake City that they're going to be policing. And then finally, require a sufficient budget to provide for professional diversity, equity, and inclusion training for all officers, and that it also be in some version of ongoing in the in-service trainings as well. So those were the 3 specific component areas that we have been specifically looking at, with some very broad recommendations in each of those areas while identifying the issues. I'll pause for questions, but also for any of the subcommittee members to offer any thoughts if I've missed anything or the depth of anything that we've been addressing. So.
This is fantastic.
And Dante, just briefly, specifically to the mayor's question about providing CIT to BIPOC communities, we did discuss briefly with one of the civilian supervisors, social worker, I believe, about the importance of specific and cultural application of some of this work, and she expressed a desire and has seen it in other jurisdictions, the value of particularly those outreach folks, not necessarily the whole department, but the outreach folks having a more depth of understanding of ways to engage with various communities as it relates to mental health. And I think that that's particularly critical because of the challenges of equitable access to mental health that can occur in communities of color. So Mayor, we did scratch the surface on that, but it's Dante said it's not in its final phase, but just for your situational awareness, that is on the table.
Wonderful. And I would encourage, and perhaps this is the plan anyhow, but any items that maybe don't fit in and become an explicit recommendation, but can be supplemental notes or things for exploration by the department or other parts of the administration. We will take everything that goes onto your cutting room floor as well.
Okay, thank you.
Dante, could you do me a favor and put that last screen back up? You said something at the end. And I just
Sure.
want
Let me find it again.
Thank
There it is. This one?
yeah. And what did you say about the DNI sufficient budget to provide? Now, did you say
Yeah. So Arbinger it provides 20 hours of training in the academy. And a piece of that curriculum is related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We haven't seen the curriculum. I don't know that we can get that curriculum. It's probably copyrighted, but we have not seen it. And so I'm not sure what that is. But the majority, if not, well, the majority of their training around implicit bias and other areas of equity come from Arbinger, that consultant that comes in to do that training in the academy.
Okay.
And so, again, we're not clear on what that statement on the budget document that we received is. So no matter what, our request is that there's sufficient budget to really provide professional DEI training in the academy.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Other questions? Okay, thank you. Why don't we go to policies and practices? Josh?
All right, here we go. So let me share my screen. Tell me if you can see it. What's you can see it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, 1 second. All right, I got to stop sharing real quick because when I did that, I couldn't see you guys. So I'm going to switch screens real quick. All right, is that big? Can you see it?
Yes, it looks good.
Awesome. All right, so the policies and practices subcommittee has been awesome. Lots of questions, as I'm sure many of you have in your subcommittees as well. We tried to identify areas of most concern that we felt like we could dive into early and understand and start to create some recommendations. The first was use of force, and then the second was accountability in law enforcement. So regarding use of force, we had a lot of great discussions on use of force. The Salt Lake City Attorney's Office was very good with engaging with us and answering questions and gathering data, as was the police department, and providing staff to come to our meetings and answer questions. So the main concern around use of force, I think, boils down to this concern that SLCPD and the community are operating on two different planes of understanding regarding the legalities, policies, and practices related to what is subjectively reasonable and acceptable use of force. The issue is that there are continued incidents involving use of force with the perception and or reality of little to no accountability. I think MJ spoke a little bit to this at the beginning of this meeting, as did others, in expressing some of these frustrations and related to this issue. So yes, there have been positive steps and initiatives, this commission being one, the mayor's executive order being another one, and then Chief Brown spoke to us about others initiatives and changes that have been made. And it's a good start. Some recommendations we're moving forward and working on now related to this include: one, modify and reconcile the policies and procedures to be more reflective of what the community considers and understands to be reasonable and acceptable. Some of this might require outreach and engagement, as we'll be doing moving forward, and education on use of force and the code and state law, case law. To proactively and explicitly communicate the difference between the case law and the Salt Lake City Police Department's policies and practices, and its processes, application, and expected outcomes involving use of force. Again, Salt Lake City Police Department came and went through the criminal, the civil, and the employment side of discipline and action taken when use of force is involved. And it's hard to understand that. We think that can be explicitly communicated. And then we're going to discuss potential options, including the subcommittee and the commission advocating at a state level with the support, backing, and partnering of the city. And I'll speak to that a little bit more in number 2, but also Salt Lake City Police Department recommendation to enact policies that go beyond what courts and case law require, and partner with the commission to educate the community on that. Again, an example is Mayor Mendenhall's executive order and others that have taken place recently, but stand side by side with the commission in talking about these, announcing these initiatives, and educating the public on them. 3, conduct an internal survey to understand where we are with race and bias right now. Carol provided, or Commissioner Shurtleff provided a example survey, but the intent would be to understand what we're working with and how we might better provide recommendations related to changes to the policies and procedures and training that are viable, feasible, and sustainable. 2, and is accountability of law enforcement. The second scoped item that we really tried to hone in on. Be explicit, communicating the scope of influence of the commission and subcommittees, and empower them to do it, to do their work. This is an issue because there, as we've heard from everybody here, and particularly today and in our subcommittee, there's an urgency that's felt to seize the day now to effectuate the change desired and hoped for. For us to do this, this subcommittee feels like it's important to understand and assess how police department's policies and procedures are being implemented, measured, and applied. They have provided data when we requested. I know it can be a burden. So we made some recommendations that might facilitate the exchange of information to relieve the burden on them, but also to empower the subcommittees to achieve their goals. One would be provide the commission the same access to data and information as the Citizen Review Board. The subcommittee would like the Salt Lake City attorneys to explore the potential of this to enable the commission to be effective and effectuate change. And this was discussed in our last meeting, and as I understand, being explored by the attorney's office right now. To make it possible for those over 21 to be able to sign an NDA to have access to more information if one isn't possible. And 3, empower the commission's scope of influence, even if it is outside the jurisdiction of the city, when there is a clear nexus with the commission's mission and purpose and the legislation or initiatives that are occurring. So empower the commission to provide legislative recommendations, advocate change at the state level, and be empowered by the city. So one other, not necessarily recommendation, but an action that others have taken action on already, including Moises and Nicole, and is to engage in some analogous learning to see what other recommendations are being made and how they're being implemented, and learn from successes. And so that's a mouthful. I know the subcommittee's been hard at work, and and has been drinking out of a fire hose and asking a lot of questions and learning a lot. And I feel like it's just scratching the surface, but has a direction to go. And so I'll turn it over to the subcommittee members of the Policies and Practices Subcommittee if they have anything to add.
Josh, you know I always have something to add.
It's always good.
And you may have said it in a roundabout way, but I've been thinking about this since our last meeting. And I feel like we have someone representing law enforcement on our committee to help us understand the law, but we don't have anybody besides ourselves on this telephone call to defend what we're trying to say in regard to what the law says. We keep being told what the law says, this is how it's written, but that's not making change. We need to hear more than what the law says. We need to see change in the law. So I'm not sure if you said it in a roundabout way in your notes, but it's just really been bothering me. You know, it's like we need to see change in what the law says, not what the law says. Thank you.
Yes, everything I just said, you just said in 20 seconds. So thank you, Commissioner.
Can I ask a question, Carol?
Yes.
Do you, so that I understand it better, perhaps, and our staff who's on the call, do you mean that instead of hearing just the interpretation of the law as the police department or the city sees it, having, and I know there's attorneys on the commission as well, but maybe having a supplemental legal voice who can say, this is what the commission's talking about, this is what you're saying the law is, this is the type of legal change which may rest at a federal, state, or local level, but here's the meat of the change that would take to bridge that gap. Is that the kind of interpretation that is lacking?
No, I think it's, well, and maybe you said this and I don't understand it correctly, someone to represent the people. You know, we have someone representing what the law says, but who's representing the people on these phone calls? Does that make sense? You know, you've got an attorney on this side, but there's also an attorney on this side. But we don't have that on the phone call. Because to be honest, we're very frustrated with the language. And it just, you know, we keep hearing the language and we keep hearing the law, but it's been very frustrating. And that came out in the last meeting because, so the law is the law and nothing's going to change. So why are we here?
Yeah, so I can speak to that. And so part of it is, being empowered to have influence, right? To learn from what others have done and implement it. When like an executive order goes out, may involve the commission to stand on your side and make the announcement. Also, I think we will be bringing in our thought partners from Pepperdine University, where they have experience with what Carol's talking about on both sides, but also implementing recommendations or making recommendations that address the issues that have been identified by the subcommittee.
Maybe if I can suggest, if I'm hearing this too, as many debates as I've had with different city attorneys, they have their own legal interpretation and I can have mine and they don't necessarily have to meet. But I think what I'm hearing Commissioner Shiflett describe is wanting to have someone that she thinks can represent an alternative interpretation of that legal statute or the law. Is that correct, Commissioner?
Maybe, I can understand it when they tell us the law, when they've shown us what the this is the law is. I understand what they're saying, but what I'm not hearing is there's no room for change. This is the law and that's it. This is how it's written and that's it. And there's no room for change. And just having someone on there listening to our voices, an attorney especially, to hear what we're saying, I think will help. Maybe the lawyers can go back and say, okay, like you said, this is what they're trying to say. So yeah, maybe that is what you're saying. I'm not.
Well, let me offer this, and no one can throw a shoe at me because we're on a virtual call from Salt Lake City's attorney's office. But our intention with our attorneys who are assisting and attending is that they be a neutral party. And it is not our intention that they give you in a matter of fact, there is no pliability. And I know I'm exaggerating a little bit, Carol, perhaps from what you're saying, I hope. But the intention is that they be a neutral party. So if they need to be more reflective in the conversation of what the people are saying, and maybe orient the interpretation of where the law stands today, but where specific legal changes could align it better with the people, I know that they're capable of doing that. And I know Rachel denies being an attorney, but she actually is one. She's on this call, and I don't know if any of our other attorneys are, and they could speak up and validate that they're able to do this. Mark Cottrell.
Thanks, Mayor.
And I was going to also say, and Stephen, if you have anything to throw in, piggyback off of what I'm trying to say. Go ahead.
No, thank you, Mayor. And I want to echo the mayor's comments here. I have always viewed myself as a neutral broker of information. I try to be very careful to not put my spin or interpretation of what the law should be, more what the law is, and allow the commissioners to sort of do what they will with that information, and perhaps also answer legal questions related to those questions. But if you believe that I'm not perhaps projecting that, or if there's an issue with that, I'm all ears. Former defense lawyer, I got a thick skin. Happy to. I've been yelled at by more than enough judges, but please, yeah, I want to make certain I maintain that neutrality, be that neutral broker of information. So don't be afraid to call me on the mat about that.
Okay, no problem.
And if I could real quick, Mr. Cottrell has been very helpful in these meetings, especially from a young perspective, studying these policy issues. Ephraim's not currently here, President Coombe from the University of Utah, but I can also speak to the degree of, for people looking to go into policy and how we can effectuate change, we have to understand that there's the policy side, and then there's that cultural side, like you're mentioning, Carol. But ultimately, when we're looking at our foundational perspective, we have to look at our policy side. So I would counter to the extent to say the mayor's executive order and the days following the May 30th protest were very prominent in cooling the minds and I think attitudes of a lot of people in the community. I think the willingness of Salt Lake City Police Department to meet us on the commission at all is a sign that Salt Lake City can be a statewide model, but of course it's not going to be perfect. But the things that are affecting us the most have been statewide measures such as Graham versus Connor. That's not something that we can really effectuate change at a city municipal level. So that's why I think Dante's and the facilitator's recommendation to start bringing more of that legislative standpoint from the state level is critical to our understanding, right? Culture change isn't going to be 100% different in Salt Lake City when I can drive 10 minutes west and be in West Valley. So what can we start doing and within the Salt Lake City based perspective with the means we have and the leaders that are actually willing to even sit down and talk to us to get to that point? And I feel like the city has been neutral. If you feel like maybe we could have the ACLU, maybe that's another branch we could look at and maybe an independent perspective. But thank you, Mark. I would like to personally thank you for everything you've been doing as well. I don't want you to think that we're you're by any means not doing your job.
No. Thank you, Commissioner Powell. And I don't mean to be too defensive. I'm just trying to make certain that I make sure that you guys understand that I know my role, and I want to make sure I stay within those lanes. Thanks.
And let me piggyback on both of those comments. I'm not saying that you're not doing your job. I think you are doing your job. I think you're telling us what the law is. But I think we hear that week after week after week. And that is really and we hear you. Trust me, I do hear everything you're saying. But I don't see any discussion or hear any discussion about how we can change this law or review the law so that we can make some changes. I feel like we're not moving anywhere. And Stephen, I think you were going to say something. So I'm going to go ahead and let you jump in, please.
I thought I was having some problem with my audio. I tried to jump in and then nothing happened. But I think what Carol's looking for, we're looking for the blueprint on how to actually make change in the language of the law. I mean, we can make recommendations on policy and changes, but I want to know what's the blueprint? How do we get that implement of change from beginning to end? What are the steps and what's the process? That's what I want to know. And how Carol is saying, we need somebody on our side giving us that information and walking us through that process so we can actually do some change.
Because it seems pretty stagnant right now. It seems like since we've been on these calls, we've been stuck on that first sentence. And I feel like we really haven't moved any further because we're so stuck there continuing to hear about what the law is, if that makes sense.
And I appreciate that. I'm sorry, let me just maybe suggest that the description of what the law is, what the law lets you do, doesn't mean it's what you should do. And that's where policy comes in. I mean, you can't change the Graham standard because that's the Supreme Court. So, you know, whether the law allows you to shoot at a fleeing vehicle or not, doesn't mean that that's what the policy should allow you to do. So I would suggest that policies are what can influence how the law is accomplished in the city of Salt Lake, if that makes sense.
I'm seeing some resonance on the pieces. And I want to mention also that the legislative approach piece that Rachel's prepared to talk about might also be a good lever to help move the conversation or the actions along.
Thank you. Thank you. Great conversation. Any further descriptions or comments, questions?
No, I want to say that Ephraim really put it well the last time we met. He laid it out, you know, I think he opened the door for talking about our frustration, which was really good.
Thank you.
Carol?
Yes.
And this is kind of based on what MJ was talking about. Like when I work with ACLU, right? It's an attorney that isn't just talking about what the law is saying, but how can we change that law? And it's a very different view. There's two lawyers, and this one, they're fighting for the change. That's their perspective versus somebody that this is what the law is, and I'm trying to be neutral, which is a lot of times as a social scientist, that's who I am. But when you work with a different perspective like the ACLU, and Steve and I, you know, we've worked with them. They come in with that, hey, this is a change we need. And as Stephen's point, we can provide a blueprint because, you know, we changed this other law a couple of years ago, and it took a while, but this is what we needed to do. We needed to collect data. We needed to get certain legislatures or whatever. Is that what you're kind of talking about? Because I'm still a little bit confused of what you're asking for. Is that what you mean? Like an attorney with that type of lens of let's take this on and let's change it.
Yeah, that's exactly what we need.
Okay. Thank you.
To the mayor's point, maybe Ms. Otto can speak to what's happening at the legislature. So why don't we go to the SR, so the school safety, and then maybe we'll be able to hear from Ms. Otto before the mayor has to go to her next meeting.
Can you all hear me? Making sure that my microphone issues don't still exist. All right. You guys are paying me to be brief and be a facilitator, so I'm gonna meet the challenge because we've had a lot of chit chat. So I'm gonna try to valuable chit chat, but still, I'm gonna try and get through ours as efficiently as possible. So school safety, obviously we look a lot at the school resource officer program, as that is a Salt Lake City PD program. So that's where a lot of these recommendations are currently around. We spent our first few weeks doing a lot of research, as many did, and now we do have some that are immediate recommendations and some that are still in process. So right now, the first issue we talked about was that continued racial disparity that the data shows us that students interacting with school resource officers, there's still a racial disparity to some degree, even though juvenile justice reform in recent years has dramatically decreased the number of students that are referred to that system. There's still a disparity that needs to be addressed, and that's what our group has been talking about quite a bit. One of the things that flagged recently is there was a memorandum of understanding between the Salt Lake City PD and the school district that was executed a couple years back. It is set to expire in February of 2021. So we see that as an opportunity potentially for our group to be involved in revisiting that. Or at the very least extending it to make sure that those rules stay in place beyond February until we can have recommendations to go along with that. So that's just a timing issue on that MOU. Also, as we've looked into the data, the issue with the data is that Latinos are not disaggregated. They're not separated out in the data, which, as we know, for our Salt Lake City demographics, that can be problematic in really understanding what problems are existing within the program. So to that end, at least as far as our research has taken us, is that the vendor for the program where the data is stored does not currently allow for that information to be gathered separately, and potentially some gender things. So based on what we know right now, we would recommend a change of vendor, but it's possible we don't have all the information just based on the conversations we've had. So those are the two recommendations on that. Next is there are stated goals of the SRO program, but it's clear from what we've researched that those have shifted, changed, and kind of adjusted over the years. So it's when we look at accountability that's put in place, it's difficult to understand what criteria that program is being measured against. To say what constitutes success for this program is not really spelled out, and the data is not tracked in ways that we can be super helpful with that. So with the goals not being tracked very closely, even though it's in the MOU that there's supposed to be kind of some accountability pieces, but those are not happening exactly as stated. So our next steps towards formulating recommendations are in talking with the people who are meant to meet and keep that accountability in place. They have stated that they're open to our thoughts. They're saying, if you have thoughts on what criteria we should be measuring them against, please do offer those to us. So we have that opening, which we were excited to see. Establish the goals of the SRO program, because they're difficult to understand, and determine if we are really open to determining whether the SRO program is still the very best program to meet those needs, or if there's some other adjustments needed. So it's still within the realm of possibility that we might recommend getting rid of the program or reallocating resources in a different way. But we're not ready to recommend that at this point. But we do have some questions that we're still working on in that realm. Lastly, I would say the concerns about the SRO program and its contributions to the school to prison pipeline. Again, I want to recognize one thing we have learned is there has been so much work towards this, and a lot of efforts are currently happening and have happened in recent years to really address this. And some of them have been very efficient and effective, and others have not. So there's still much work to be done. But we want to recognize that there's been progress in this way, but there's still a disparity. So in order to get our arms around this better, there's currently a literature review underway. Both Moises and some of the lovely interns at Salt Lake City are helping us to do that. to better understand what's happening nationwide around student safety and school safety, to see if there's best practices we can learn from, or if there have been pitfalls that we want to avoid. And we also want to understand better the state and local and county efforts, so that we're not duplicating efforts, so that we are recommending things that are not undoing something that some other group is doing. Lastly, conducting some small group and one-on-one interviews with students of color who have interacted with SROs, their parents, and the SROs themselves. They're scheduled for this month, so those are upcoming. We don't have that data just yet. So this is where the school safety group is at, and I will pause here and see if there are thoughts from the group, from our school safety group, that they want to speak up and represent in addition to what I've presented.
Briefly, the discussion of establishing goals, we wanted to make sure that those goals are measurable. We don't want a goal that's amorphous and we can't measure, so we won't be able to determine whether a goal is, whether the program is meeting that goal specifically. I know that's going to be tricky, but that was really what we were hoping for, is to establish some type of measurable goal, something that's evidence driven, so that we can look at hard data and say, is this program working? Is it not working? What are the shortcomings? Where could it use help? Is this just an inappropriate fit? Is there a better program we can use? The other thing too that I did notice was, I don't know if we actually agreed to have this be a recommendation, but to have an actual staff person on the mayor's staff working on the school to prison pipeline issue. There was a staff member under Mayor Biskupski, Angie Doan, who was working full-time on the school to prison pipeline. And in speaking with her, it really was a full-time job working on that one specific issue. And whether this group agrees or not, I think that there needs to be a specific staff person working on the school to prison pipeline in the mayor's office.
Excellent. Thank you, Nicole. Yeah, and I will say that the measurable goals are tricky to come by, especially, one of the stated goals of this program was to increase trust between police and students students of color, and it's a difficult thing to measure across the board about changes in trust levels. So just to underscore Nicole's point about measurability, that's that. And then I think I saw Dati. Did you want to say something?
Yeah,
Oh, no. Oh, Dati, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Just really quickly. So we have several students that serve on the subcommittee for the SROs and school safety. I'm in the unique position where I'm the student board member for Salt Lake City School District, and I serve on this committee as well. So that gives me that bridge to represent both the students from the district as well as the students that I see here at the commission. So to that end, we already know how the community feels about SROs. Students, especially, both MJ and I have had interactions with SROs. And they're not always great. And so I think that's something that we're really hopeful to look at and look forward to. In an effort to consolidate our power as subcommittee members, we will be compiling our own independent recommendations and try to give that forth. I can't ensure that they will be as well thought out or as beautiful as yours, but nonetheless, I'm sure they will be impactful, and I stand by our youth subcommittee, and I'm sure that we'll do a great job. So thank you.
Dati, I think what you were saying is you're going to try to not make us look bad.
Right.
Because I'm sure that youth subcommittee will be outstanding.
Yes, they
as far
have
as the
been at
measurables-
every turn.
Their work has been amazing.
Yeah. They're all great, whatever. Hey, as far as measurable, we're working with their oversight committee. They don't have a researcher there, so we'll definitely be helping them on how to do measurable outcomes, and not just negative but positives. Right? We're trying to collect all the data as well as narratives, so we could have a full picture of what's really going on.
Great. And before the mayor has to jump off and maybe anybody has any more questions, I just want to be clear and acknowledge and thank the chief for his active participation, and thank the chief and his staff, command staff and others, for really being responsive to our inundation of them with requests for information and data. I've committed to the chief, we're going to do a little bit better so that there's some timeline, so not everybody feels like everything has to be done by tomorrow. So, but they've been very, very responsive, and we appreciate that support.
Is that a good segue to the youth subcommittee report?
I think it is, if there's no questions more for you or your committee. So youth subcommittee.
Rogelio?
What you guys got?
We don't have much. We've been mainly discussing and just seeing what every other committee has. We were planning on making a PowerPoint presentation, but that kind of fell through. So we're planning on continuing that and kind of coming back with the recommendations at a later time.
And then additionally, we are networking with Josh right now, and the city has offered resources such as the city library to offer safe spaces for students in the oncoming year after COVID ends to hopefully start pursuing avenues such as after school programs or just spaces for them to kind of talk without the law enforcement and official presence. And I think a lot of the youth subcommittee members are willing to volunteer to do those. So we're still waiting to organize these events and whatnot. But again, Mayor Mendenhall, thank you for networking us with the resources and means to get that done. So we're going to follow up on that this year.
Yes. And just a quick plug to that. We also talked about having you guys help us with our social media outreach for the upcoming listening sessions and some of the engagement opportunities to connect better with our youth. And so when you next meet, I'm just plugging to get your help with that.
Thank you. And Mayor Mendenhall, before you have to jump off in a minute, any final comments or action items you're going to leave with us that would be helpful? Or anything?
Oh, you've got a lot of action items going on here, and I'm definitely not going to put more on your plate tonight. But I think that I'm impressed at how much you've done, and I can't wait to actually, to Commissioner Shiflett's point, get to the work of taking the recommendations. And we have people from the City Council to our office and the Attorney's office for sure, who I think are very good at the translation aspects of that. And Rachel, unfortunately, I won't get to hear Rachel's part tonight, but she'll be able to, I hope, help give some clarity on how the legislative aspects outside of City Hall also can be productive. And it's no wonder, though. I mean, this system wasn't built to be unpacked. So the fact that you're coming up against, feeling like the wheels are spinning, or that there's a tool you need that we didn't put in your hands in the first place, like, God love you for it. Yeah, no wonder. It was built to not be unconstructed. It's hundreds and hundreds of years old. Even this city's over 100 years old. This state just had 125th birthday this week. So get big hammers, whatever we've got to do. I didn't just incite violence, okay? That's not what I was trying to do there. I'm talking from a policy level. We're speaking with words. We can take things apart, and I really commend you for keeping at it, even when you might be frustrated that's not, rolling fast enough or needs to be rejiggered a little. We want to help you do that rejiggering, and I want to keep my fingerprints. I want this to be to be you all in the commission and the community, and I'm just so proud of you. Thanks for giving me a lot of hope tonight too.
Mayor, can I thank you for that comment you just made? This is Commissioner Shiflett again. The system was not built to be unpacked. Hundreds and hundreds of years that we've got to do. And so that just alone just validates, okay, we are working towards unpacking the system. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you,
care,
Mayor.
everybody.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Otto, I think you're up.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for giving me a few minutes to join you. I'm glad that my boss jumped off before I get to talk. It's always a good way to start. Seriously, though, we are, as you all know, on the cusp of the legislative session this year. And I wanted to, after the mayor laid out kind of our focus right now on those three areas of really trying to support this commission, support the police department and some of those structural changes, and then working on the legislative strategy, I wanted to get your feedback on how you think you would like to weigh in on legislation this session, and make sure that you feel like you're aware of what the city's position is on bills, and make sure that you feel like we understand what the commission's position is on certain bills. So just to lay the groundwork for you, in a normal year, and just any regular year, there are typically well over 100 bills that deal with law enforcement. So let's see, last year I think there were over 130 bills that have something to do with some aspect of law enforcement. So you can imagine that's obviously a lot to keep up on. And this year, I think that we're going to see at least that kind of volume. And it won't be just kind of the typical law enforcement bills we see about, small tweaks maybe to certain policies or certain training. There will be a lot of eyes on the bills this year, and it will be some of the bigger policy items that you guys are all talking about and struggling with and debating over. So we of course are tracking bills. There's a huge amount of subject matters. I guess what I would like to get some feedback from you on, either now or offline, is how you'd like to make sure that you weigh in. So these things move really quickly during the session, and sometimes we'll get language on a bill the night before, for example, it's going to be heard in committee the next day. And it's a tight turnaround. It's a ton to keep up on. So I don't know if it's reasonable to think that you all can meet and discuss all of the bills, that might be interesting to you in an open meeting, once a week even, and have that be timely. So one thing we might want to propose is that a small group of you decide, or that you decide which of you is going to be focused on legislation this year. I don't know if it's the core commissioners or if there's another subgroup who would want to maybe be kind of on call for how to weigh in on those bills. And we could share a tracking sheet with you on what we're paying attention on, and get your feedback and let you know kind of where we are on the bill, what our policy considerations are on the bill, and then invite you to add notes to the tracking sheet. We could do it in a few different ways, but I'm open to your suggestions on how to go from here. We can talk about that now, or we can talk about it offline. I know that you guys are short on time. And I do want to just conclude by saying that some of the things that I know that you're grappling with, these big policy issues, they are things that might require state level changes, state statutory changes. Some of them, maybe there's obviously a lot steeped in federal case law that may or may not be able to be addressed at the state level either. But these are the kinds of things that you can advocate for and push for the system level change that you want to see. This is an opportunity, right, to make bigger changes that are beyond Salt Lake City. So, it isn't an issue where we're operating under a certain set of policies in Salt Lake City, but you go to West Valley and you have a whole different set. This is, this can be broader systematic change. So it does matter. And I'm happy to talk, in more detail about the bills that we're seeing come up now. I'm happy to set up smaller meetings with you about the bills that we're seeing come up now, or figure out, what subject matter expert you might want to talk to about certain bills. I just want to be helpful to where you guys want to be involved in the legislative process this session.
Thank you. There's already some takers for that legislative small group, so I think that's not going to be a problem. So maybe we can kind of coordinate that offline. I think would be great. And another component before I open it up, but is also to have an understanding of what might be coming up through City Council in what city council is looking at through ordinance changes or things of that nature. So it's not purely at the state, but also what city council is considering as well.
And I was shared a letter from Council Chair Chris Wharton last week that I think you all got to, hopefully making clear that, you know, as they're doing ordinance changes, they welcome your feedback, and it can be an iterative process. So, you know, I know we've gotten some feedback even just on the city council has gotten some feedback on the body worn camera ordinance that they most recently considered. And that, you know, none of those things are set in stone is the way that I understand the city council's process there. So I don't think you should be afraid to weigh in on those sorts of policy issues too. It's not like we pass an ordinance and then there's no discussion thereafter.
Yeah, Rachel, I'll just add to that. I know the policies and practices subcommittee is very interested in what's going on at the legislature, as I mentioned, and then also Mark and Katie did say that same thing when they were talking about some of these ordinances that have been enacted. And so I appreciate you reiterating that.
Thank you. Any questions from Ms. Otto? All right, thank you, Rachel. We'll coordinate and then get back with you on maybe some process to create that engagement.
Actually, Dante, I do have a question or a comment. There seems to be, or how is it that we could improve communication between City Council, the Commission, and the Mayor's office? Because again, we'll hear that these things are passed, they're being considered, and we get caught off guard. Is there a way that we could improve that communication, or I don't know? Yeah.
Commissioner Prospero, I'm glad you brought that up because I agree that it does. I've had that same sort of reaction of, I think at least in the mayor's office, we're kind of like, we're focused on our path and we want to make certain changes or we want to do certain things. And, we go. And I don't know and I know that the city council has had certain things that they wanted to make sure that they got done before the end of the calendar year too. And I think it's really important that the commissioners have pointed that out those times, because I think now I think we've both branches have realized that we need to be more deliberate and not just wait for you to make your recommendations at the conclusion of your work, and just let you operate in a vacuum. But we need to make sure we're doing better at bringing you all along on the path. So I appreciated you reaching out to let us kind of talk about our current efforts. And I hope that it's clear that what we're doing right now is we don't have anything in the works right now that we're transmitting to city council or something like that. We're working, on these internal structural things with Chief Brown and with HR. And our focus right now is really on the legislative process and making sure that you're getting the information you need. So I think it's flagged now based on the mistakes that we've made over the past few months by not including you. So I hope that we're good now. But if you have a systems level type thing that you want to make sure that we do, I get it. And I apologize for what may feel like an intentional lack of inclusion, but has not been.
No, not at all that I think it was intentional. I think it's just, we all start doing our thing. I just think that if it's a combined voice by all those three entities, it's a much more powerful voice. And we want to make sure we support y'all and vice versa. So thank you.
If I could, I'm Allison Rowland from the City Council staff. I just want to echo what Rachel mentioned and on behalf of the council, express their support and their interest in supporting this group and in working in concert with you. They took a lot of time and thought in the letter that they sent to you because you are very important to them. So I want to underline where we would like to do whatever we can to improve that communication and make sure that both that you feel included and supported, and we're willing to do whatever we need to do to help you out on that.
Thank you. Thanks. Any other thoughts or questions on the legislative components? Okay, so at this moment, I want to pause and see if there's any public comment that is waiting online. The phone number is 800-934-9182. So, Cindy Lou?
Dante, I do have two members in the Zoom room with us. If they're interested in commenting by order of their arrival, I do have Sadie Connors. And Sadie, I will just go ahead and unmute your microphone. Dante, we have kind of a set limit, but I don't know if you just have a limit on the 1 to 2 minutes for tonight's comment period.
Yeah.
Okay. Sadie, we'll start your time. We'll just start your timer once you begin.
All right, great. Thank you. Ms. Connor?
So I actually don't have any comments right now. Thank you, though.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you for being here.
And then we also have Andrew Riggle in the room. I'll go ahead and unmute your microphone, Andrew, if you'd like to provide a comment.
Oh, good evening again, commissioners. I will spare you hearing from me this evening, but we look forward to sharing our next set of comments with you in the next few weeks. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here.
That's all that I have in the Zoom room. I'll turn it over to Larry if he has any on the phone.
And we don't.
Okay. Thank you. Even if you don't have a comment and you're listening from the public, we appreciate you being here.
Sorry, Dante. I just had Sherry hop back in.
Oh, okay.
I think she may have joined so that she could participate. Sherry,
Okay.
I'll go ahead and unmute your microphone if you're interested in sharing a comment. She just got back in. So there she is. Sherry, your microphone is unmuted. Oh, you've muted it. Perhaps she is not interested in commenting.
Yeah, I'm okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Sherry.
No comment.
Thank you, Ms. Whitworth. Okay. And while we're listening to important people, I just want to provide the space. Thank you, MJ, Commissioner Powell, for suggesting that we give the chief any opportunity to offer any thoughts or comments, given some of the things that he's seen or heard today from the committees. Would love to hear or give you the space to offer any thoughts.
Thank you, Dante, and thanks, commissioners. I appreciate the time that we spend together. I really do. If anybody knows me, I'm always willing to sit down and have these hard conversations. MJ, we met, what, 6-7 years ago when you were a young student at West High?
Yes, sir.
We've had long, hard, difficult talks, and we've discussed different things. I've met you on the street, and anytime that that we've needed to talk, I've been there. So, and commissioners, I hope you feel the same. If there's anything I can ever do, the conversations we have, myself and the command staff and the officers of the Salt Lake City Police Department are appreciative of the work you're doing, and we're thankful for the suggestions, because I know in the long run your intent is to help us become a better police department and serve the community here in Salt Lake City. So I just I'll be brief and just tell you thank you. I hope you had a good holidays, and I look forward to a good year together.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chief. Next up on the agenda, a couple of items. Well, Chief, while you're there, any thoughts or comments or report on the partner payer program that several of the commissioners were interested in?
Yes. Yeah, Dante, when we talked about this about a month ago, I've identified at least 12 officers that are very interested in being a part of this program. I'll expand it as we need. How we do it, I mean, COVID kind of set us back a little bit because we didn't know how we could, put people together, do ride-alongs, have those conversations. But in talking with Lieutenant Zayas, who had just had to check out, perhaps, and this is just a suggestion, if you would like, we could set up a time where we could do maybe a Zoom meeting with the commission and these officers they could maybe do a brief introduction and present where they're at in the department, where they come from, a little bit about their background, and then maybe field some questions from you. And then if there's an individual or an officer that you would like to have further conversations with, we can do that as well. Nothing's off the table. They're more than willing, and they're excited actually to share their experiences and to hear from you as part of this group. So they're ready.
Great, thank you, Chief. Are these all patrol officers, or just come from a variety of places in the department? Or?
Yeah, no, they're different assignments within the department. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey, Lieutenant, I think you wanted to say something.
Well, I was just going to say there are a variety of people. We have supervisors and detectives and patrol officers as part of this. We have women, we have people of color as well that are volunteering to be part of this. So.
Okay, great, thank you. So commissioners, does that sound like a reasonable first step, is to hold a kind of separate opportunity to do speed dating with an officer?
Speed dating, I like that.
That's what it sounds like.
I think we're going to have our own reality show. Who needs a bachelor? Speed dating with an officer.
Right, bring a rose, right?
That's it.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, I like this as a first step, and then if we could, follow through, so you could start, building that relationship, understanding better of what's going on within a police department and vice versa, so they can hear community what our thoughts are and concerns. Because at first it may be just like dating, oh, we're all, hey, everything, and it takes a while to build that relationship and then start being able to truly talk about the issues that are on hand. And I mean, for me, for officers to really hear community in their perspective, and vice versa, of course, too. Yeah, but I like that first step.
So how would you suggest we set that up, Chief? Or you and I try to coordinate maybe a doodle poll or something to see what works best for everyone, or how do you want to try to do that?
Yeah, let's pick maybe a date and time that works for everybody. Let's set aside an hour. Let's get the invites out, and like I say, we'll get people together and we'll start that conversation. I think it'll be very beneficial for both sides. And Commissioner Prosperos, I think you're absolutely right. I think at first it'll be a little bit, standoffish, but I think you're going to see people come together, and I think there's going to be really good conversation. Maybe not, even in the meetings, but I think it'll expand to one-on-one time, or, as comfortable as people feel. I think there will be great conversation that will be very beneficial for the work we're doing.
Okay. So we'll try to schedule a time that hopefully works for everybody and see what kind of response we get, and then go from there. Great. Thank you for setting that up, Chief and Lieutenant. Okay. I'm not sure we have time to address the resignation of the previous Corps Commissioner in discussing the replacement. Thoughts on, I'm not sure what the kind of email exchange has been. Either Coletta or Cindy Lou, help me out, please, on next process.
So we do need to fill the vacancy in an open and public meeting. So the anticipation was that there would be an opportunity to discuss with the full commission, perhaps what area we'd like to emphasize, and if anybody had individuals in mind. We didn't necessarily want to go through an application process as much as go based off recommendation of the commission. So I agree that you don't have time tonight, so we can certainly put it on next week's agenda. Sorry, I have a visitor. And if we could just put it on the next commission's agenda, and perhaps just have individuals consider what areas of focus we want to emphasize in the next member.
Okay, thank you. And that brings back to mind the next week's meeting, the 13th, was originally scheduled to be the first community listening session. That has had to be moved back a week until the 20th, based on a number of things and ensuring that there's TV availability, et cetera. So next week's scheduled meeting for listening session is open. So I guess my question to the full commission is, would it be beneficial to hold another full commission meeting and we can take care of some of those logistical items and also probably then even more specifically address how to do the speed dating with a cop kind of thing and reach some possible dates and times for those logistical infrastructure kinds of things? Or would you prefer to go back into subcommittees next week? So would love to hear your thoughts, or we can just do a thumbs up, thumbs down, however you might want to do this.
Dante, when's our next scheduled full commission meeting? Do you know?
I'd have to look.
Or Cindy Lou.
Yeah. So this was just part of one of the logistics. If you go by the standard, which was identified last year, it was regular, and then the next week was subcommittee. Because we had the listening session, we bumped that. And so the following week, the 20th, was intended to be subcommittee, and then we were going to have a full commission. So everything's kind of switched up for January. We are happy to follow your lead in which direction you'd like to go. If you'd like to hold a regular commission next week on the 13th, have the listening session on the 20th, and do subcommittees the following week, that's fine. And then if that's the case, we can discuss the rest of the calendar next week at the logistical, I could call it the logistical meeting, if that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's open to discussion and decision by the commission.
So what do we have on the 27th?
Currently, the 27th is listed as a regular commission meeting.
I personally would be fine with meeting as subcommittees next week, listening session 20th, and then another full committee on the 27th. If that's all right with y'all, because I'd like to meet with our subcommittee again and start kind of grinding after this break. But what do y'all think?
Other commissioners?
I agree with Moises's notion.
I agree with
Second
that.
voting member also agrees from the youth subcommittee with that motion.
Thank you.
I'm good to wait till the 27th. Can we start that so eloquently articulated as the speed dating? And by the way, the cops are dating us. We're not dating them. They're dating us. But can we have a conversation or maybe an email or some way to facilitate getting that date set rather than bring that off on the 27th?
Yes, we can certainly do that. Absolutely.
What time would you do the full commission next Wednesday?
If we did a full commission, same time.
Okay, I won't be able to make that, but just putting that out there.
Okay. So far, I've heard mostly people are interested in a subcommittee meeting next week. Is that kind of the consensus of folks?
Yeah, I support that motion.
Okay. I think I see lots of thumbs up and head nods. So then that would be next Wednesday, the 13th would be a subcommittee meeting. The 20th would be the listening session with no commission meetings at all, but for that. And then 27th would be another full commission meeting. Is that what we're saying? Okay. Looks like that's the plan. So good, that's then set. So we'll get the information out about the opportunity to do the speed dating, for lack of a better, easier term. Help me out, Chief, find a better name for it. And then we'll go from there. Okay. And what else is on the agenda? Cindy Lou, did you want to go a quick review of the first quarter meeting schedule, or should we wait till the next opportunity of a full commission to do that?
I think we can also do that over email. So I'll just be in touch otherwise on that one. Thank you.
Okay, great. Then that is nicely done, because that's the full agenda, even though it took us a little bit longer than we expected.
We do.
Larry?
Go ahead. I'm trying to speak.
Oh, I think Larry's probably going to get to what I was going to say anyway. Go, Larry.
I was just going to say that we're very We're very excited to have the public listening session occur on January the 20th, and we appreciate both Chief Brown and Mayor Mendenhall's willingness to participate. We would highly encourage commissioners to, of course, plan to attend, but also to send me, and you can do it through Coletta, questions that you want the public to answer, because the focus of the listening session is going to be on the audience. They'll be able to participate by phone, text message, or social media, and the meeting will be simulcast in both English and Spanish. We're very excited about it, but it really is going to be as successful as folks make it in terms of giving you the information you want to hear. So please feel free to send questions that you're interested in our posing to the audience on through the staff, and we'll get those asked the night of the event. And certainly as we begin an outreach push, we would appreciate any shares on social media and distribution via email or other means to your respective networks. And I'm available for any questions as we go.
Agreed. I'm just going to add to the end of that we have a website to also collect comments at slcrepcommission.com. I sent that to all the commissioners, so feel free to share that out, because there's, to use Larry's term, asynchronous, meaning anytime people want to go on and share their thoughts, that website is there. There's a text message and a phone line that are also open now. You do not need to attend a listening session. We highly encourage that, but there are folks who probably don't want to share their opinions in a public forum, but we want everyone and anyone to feel welcome, Salt Lake City residents to feel welcome to share their voice in any way. And so we've tried to provide a number of different ways to do that, not just via the listening session. So do get that website out there. And we have started a Facebook page, and please do share that as well. That's it.
And if I could, Dante, forgive me, if I could just real briefly, the resources that Siobhan mentioned relative to web, phone, and text, the phone and text are there partly for folks for whom internet access is a challenge. Anybody can use it, but it's certainly in part for folks for whom either attending a meeting or internet posting would be difficult. So I've just shared my screen that takes you to our website and also has the number. So for those who are watching at home, here it is, 801-708-0935. And I'll leave this up here for just a moment. And then for text messaging, we've got a line set up where you just text the word equity to 801-575-7755. And when you do that, it'll walk you through a series of prompts to give us your feedback via text. So both of those, the phone and the text, don't require any internet capability. So we look forward to hearing from folks by whatever means they'd like.
Hey, Larry.
Yes.
Do we have this available for the oh Lord, the disabled, the hearing disabled?
The TTY line.
Thank you.
That's something we still need to address, Commissioner Hawkins, and I appreciate you bringing that up. We need to work on finding a way to accommodate that. So let me work on that and get back with you.
And Commissioner Hawkins, we do have an ASL interpreter lined up for the 20th for the listening session, though.
That was my second question. Thank you. Okay.
I just want to make note, just so people know, we are in Utah and everything happens during Martin Luther King birthday week, January 20th around town. There may be things happening, and I haven't seen a list yet, but I know there's always something going on. So that day may or may not work out in the end. Just be aware. It is Martin Luther King's birthday, so.
And isn't that the date of the inaugural?
Yeah, it is. And for everybody's awareness,
So,
we had initially honed in on the 13th, and unfortunately, just had some scheduling conflicts. We certainly can, look at other dates. I have to just tell you that having done this for many years, there's always going to be a scheduling conflict with whatever date and time we choose, and so. We're going to do the best we can to get folks to participate on this date. If you feel very strongly about it, certainly we will alter it. But I think that we really believe we can drive participation.
Yeah, considering
Okay.
that this is a historic inauguration, you might not get a broad participation for that.
Yeah, and just for clarity, I mean, the inauguration will probably take place sometime around 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Our program is going to be in the evening. And so hopefully, I'm sure there's some people that may monitor the news and so forth later on in the day, but the actual swearing in should take place late morning in Utah.
I'm thinking some parties around town, right, Darlene?
I have yet to receive my invitation, so.
Parties, okay?
Take
It's a
the
girl
hint.
party. It's a girl party.
Larry,
I'll host my own
Siobhan, is there a certain focus to this, a specific listening session? Because I know, there's different listening sessions with different perspectives, or is there one specific for this one?
Well, this one, Moises, is really meant for sort of the general public to be able to share a myriad of concerns. We're scheduling listening sessions with various audiences, including school, community, SROs, police at the management and frontline level and so forth. So I would say there's not, forgive the noise, I would say there's not a specific focus, but it'll draw heavily from the questions of the different subcommittees submitted to us already.
Okay.
Focus.
So it's really dependent on the questions that we submit then.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, correct.
It is. And I want to be very clear about what Larry just said, that there are smaller focus group style listening sessions happening. The general public is just that. It's for the general public. We want to hear from anybody and everybody. The smaller listening sessions are for people who may have some trauma around, some interactions that they may have had with police and are not comfortable or appropriate to share in a larger setting, or people who could face repercussions at their jobs or other things because there are sensitive things being talked about. So I don't want those to be perceived as secret, just simply that we want to get feedback from everyone that we can possibly get feedback for. And it's in recognition of the fact that not everybody will be comfortable sharing their voice in a broad public session, and also we have some folks with disabilities, et cetera, that we're trying to accommodate in those. So I just want to be very explicit about that.
Can that information be accessible to us so we can post it on our individual pages?
Yes, with the date change, we actually posted one real quick yesterday and we had to pull it back. Okay. So with the date change, we'll have it up and we'll make sure to share all of those assets with all of you, because that is a big part of our outreach strategy, because we know you all are connected to the folks that we do want to be hearing from. So watch for that in the short term.
Thank you. And at the risk of extending your evening a little bit, I do want to offer Commissioner McDonald an opportunity to present what I think is a very important conversation that might need to be had, and it would probably need to be had in closed session. And so, Commissioner, I'll just give you the opportunity to describe in general terms what it is that you would like us to address, and then we can vote on whether we should go into closed session.
And that would just be Commissioner McDonald, that would just be in the form of a motion. If you'd like to go to closed session, it would need to contain the language of the purpose of the closed session discussion. Do you have that? Or if you need anything from me, let me know.
Let me see, I should have it. And I believe it's right here, was it to consider a motion to enter a closed session? Is that what you're referring to? Yes, I would like the commission to consider a motion to go into closed session for the purpose, but not limited to, under section 52-4-205 may be held for specific purposes, including but not limited to.
And then you just need to read the discussion of deployment of security, personnel, devices, or systems.
Okay, I don't have that.
Okay. So I can read that set, and if you will just state the motion as I've read, and then you'll need a second. I'm not a commission member. I'm not voting. I'm just going to state the language for the purpose of permitting it to move forward, for the discussion of deployment of security personnel, devices, or systems, and for advice of counsel.
I'll second that motion.
So the
So
motion's
that-
made by Commissioner McDonald, seconded by Commissioner Salazar Hall. And then we do have to do a roll call vote. Commissioner McDonald, would you like to go through that, or would you like me to use the roll that I have?
Feel free.
Okay. Unfortunately, when I do this, I will not be able to see you. So I'm sorry if someone is absent. If someone could just let me know. I won't be able to see the video. Okay, so Ana Pese,
Yes.
Rogelio, Commissioner Shiflett,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Omen, that's Dottie.
She said yes. I think
She
that
said- she said
her
yes.
She
muting was
Uh,
asynchronous.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Benori,
Yes.
Commissioner Powell,
Aye.
Commissioner Suarez,
Yes.
Commissioner Prospero,
Yes.
Commissioner Salazar Hall,
Aye.
Commissioner Solovi Jr. Did he have to go?
I'm not seeing him.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Eldridge,
Aye.
Commissioner Angewerden,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hawkins,
Aye.
and is Commissioner Romero still here, or is he gone?
I don't
didn't
him.
see him.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see-
I think
Thank
he
you.
had to leave.
But there was enough yeses, so we will move into closed session, which means only commissioners and those designated may remain. If you could give me just 2 minutes, I will get the room ready. Everyone just needs to stay in this Zoom call, but feel free to turn off your cameras and take a break if you need just a minute, and we'll resume quite quickly. I just need to excuse some people from
Let's
the
call it a
meeting room.
2-minute break.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, let's do.
And thank you, commissioners, for the regular session. Much appreciated. Great work.
And if I could just add, there will be no business following the work session or following the closed session. The closed meeting, there will be no business following, so I will be stopping the recording of this meeting and the YouTube live broadcast. Thank
And
you.
do the facilitators stay on or do we not?
I will defer to Mark. I believe you're staying.
Okay, Mark, tell us if we need to drop, we will, but
And Lieutenant Zayas.